Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on achieving fixed absorption at your dealership. It's my pleasure to introduce our three speakers today. We've got John, Lloyd, and Udi. Each of them brings decades of dealership industry experience to the table, so they've got a lot of good insights and tools to share with you today to help you stay profitable in the current market and to help you plan for the future. But before I hand the floor over to them, there are a few housekeeping items that I just need to cover. First, today's webinar will be recorded, and we'll email you the link to the recording after the webinar so that you can share it with your team or watch it again. Secondly, we encourage everyone to use the designated chat box at any time during the presentation to ask questions or to share any thoughts that you have. So there's a Q&A box and a chat box. We recommend you use the chat box, and John will be monitoring that chat, and the speakers will address any questions that you have at the end of the presentation. And if we don't get to your questions during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. So please don't hesitate to ask us anything at any point. And finally, a survey will pop up at the end of the webinar, and we would appreciate it if you did take a couple of seconds to answer the questions. Your feedback will help us improve future webinars. Okay, so without further ado, John, Lloyd, Udi, I'm going to pass it on over to you guys.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I think you can see the starting slide here. And what I'm going to do, I'll kick to presentation mode so you can see it. At least this is in theory. Hey, the technology works. I just had a couple quick points to start. Absorption is typically defined as the ability for profit from parts and service to cover all of the operational costs of a dealership so that you can survive a month of not selling any equipment. That's the simple definition. Udi will talk about it a little bit later on, but just, kind of what we're here to talk about. And dealers that get the rate of absorption over 100% are the ones that will certainly survive our strange times that we're in and position themselves well going forward. For the presentation today, I'm going to be giving a total of, think of it as the top 10 ideas that you can implement. And even though I'll be giving examples from DIS software and products that can help, please take those ideas to your own current DMSs and say, look, I need to be able to try and do this. And hopefully they can help you enact or take action on these suggestions, regardless of what software you're using. The penchant throughout all of today is for me, from my side, from doing lots of these, I will not read the slides. So I will try to highlight items and I will try to get more discussion, and certainly John and Udi will add to the discussion points of each element, but we're going to go as reasonably quickly as it makes sense. And again, we welcome all your participation and questions in the chat feature. And then lastly, follow up at the very end of all the presentation slides, and you'll all get copies of that. There will be my email if you have both any additional ideas that we didn't cover that you say, hey, you know what, I do this in my dealership, I'd love to know about them. And if you've got any questions about what we're presenting today, then please also feel free to follow up with me, and I'll do my best to answer those questions in a timely fashion as well. Anything else from an intro side, John or Udi, or can I go forward?
Yeah, I think I want to talk about absorption just for a second, because you and I have been on this kick for at least 3 months, and every time we turn around, it's absorption, 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 and we try to put a different spin on it. I really think it's important that people understand, if you walk into a dealer and talk to the dealer principal today and you say, how's business? And after you get over the pleasantries of it's up and it's down, the measurement always is, well, sales are good or sales are off or inventory's tight. And I think the name of the game right now is longevity. And how do you present and maintain a stable dealership that's going to not just withstand the next 18 months, which arguably could be really challenging, but how does it sustain itself indefinitely? And that's why we keep coming back to absorption. It's a measurement of the stability of the dealership. So, if you assume that sales are off, absorption still should remain at 100%, you're great. If service is off, and you can maintain absorption at 100%, you're great. So, I mean, it's really that method of quieting the outside noise, So whether it's about used inventory or about inventory availability or about customers or acquisitions or shrinking or growing market, if you quiet all that noise down and just look at absorption, it really tells you about the stability and the long-lasting longevity of a dealership and how they work. So I think it's one of those underrated, seldom talked about, but ultra important benchmarks.
Fair enough. Okay, so hopefully this works. There we go. Why is DIS leading this, so to speak, or why are we kind of sponsoring this webinar? Quick snapshot, we do know what we're talking about. Again, I'm not going to read all of this this is just some of the OEMs we work with, but we certainly have enough market share in North America to be talking to literally hundreds of dealers with thousands of locations to both get feedback on and verify some of the things we're talking to you today. So don't think that these videos are just us speaking out of a vacuum. They come from actual use cases in businesses that have done a lot of what we're going to talk about today, okay? And again, why are we here? And this slide is something John and I have used before, but this hasn't changed in the last 3 months. We're literally in the perfect storm, and you can read the slide. The only one I'm going to make a comment on is every time we turn around, every time you open your computer, somebody's got something somewhere talking about AI. And it's fascinating that there's so many people trying to figure out what they want to do with it and how it's going to impact their business. That's going to be a whole other webinar from us down the road. But the rest of the points in here, I don't think anybody's going to argue with. It's a very challenging time. And so why are we here today? And I want to highlight the second point, which is, weirdly enough, with what's going on in the market, almost every dealer is saying, you know what, I've got opportunity, and meaning to grow my business because I already got a good base and I can expand on opportunity. Or we've got other dealers that are saying, you know what, I just want to get out of the business. And what we want to tell you today is no matter which you're going to potentially consider, maybe in the next 12 to 18 months, getting your absorption above 100% will help in both scenarios. Okay. And John, any other comments on this slide before we dig into things?
Well, I'm not sure if it's the next slide or not, but I think we want to define what absorption is, because everybody has a different version of when you say absorption, and not everybody uses it as a key metric to record their business. So Lloyd, why don't you tell me what your
and that's what I kind of led with, John, is I went the simplest way, which is total profits from parts and service covering all operational costs of a dealership in a given month. That's simple. And I mean, your accountant, your CFO is going to have different definitions. Udi will talk about more at the end of the presentation, but that's what we're here to say. Look, if you get fixed above 100%, then you're profitable without having to sell a single piece of used equipment or new equipment in a given month. And that's really the key measurement of, I guess, weathering the storm, to continue the storm analogy.
So it's really a pivot for a lot of people because, typically if you see reports on how the industry is trending in general, they talk about new equipment sales and used equipment sales. So what we're going to try and do is lift that noise off of the discussion and say, okay, let's make a horrible assumption, and it's one that I wish on no one, but if you sell absolutely no more new equipment and sell no more used equipment, how does the dealership function? What does it look like from a profit perspective? If you really want to rely on sales being that incredible variable, take it out of the mix so we don't have to deal with that variable. Is that a good assumption?
Yep.
Okay.
And the last of our lead-in slides here to kind of set the parameters for what we're talking about today. And I mean, I learned this years ago, is that everything you do in the dealership should do one of the three things, and you need to be able to measure it, meaning you're going to improve top line, you're going to improve margin, or you're going to reduce expenses. And that's exactly what we're going to try and do today, is review 10 solid ideas and even give you a few more bonus ideas that will do at least one of these things. Okay, so that's why we're here. And without further ado, I'm going to kick into area number one. And the concept here is with a automation of a time clock and using it with the technicians, obviously, from at least the DIS standpoint, is there's with our labor rounding, it's not the simple spreadsheet labor rounding. I won't go into the details here, but it really ends up gaining about 2 to 3 minutes for roughly every 6 labor punch. And from experience with literally thousands of technicians, we've charted all this, and it's really a solid, simple way. Those extra minutes add up, and at $100 per hour labor rate, it's proven to be $300 per technician per month. They're basically 3 hours time gained, right? And that adds up. Even with only 8 technicians in your shop, that's a $2,400 a month direct drop to your bottom line. And it's something that, well, dealers, if they have our quantum software, they could do this literally in a couple hours worth of setup maximum to understand it and start using it. And the only caveat I'm going to add to this is rounding labor typically isn't allowed for warranty times. There's no OEM that will allow you to round up for their warranty. You got to follow their warranty guides. So that's the one caveat on this. And sorry,
Lloyd, if you take a typical time clock, and you can go through the configuration, but if you take a typical time clock in the olden days, back when you and I were young, at best they would deal in 6-minute intervals, right? So you were talking about being 2.1 hours, 2.3 hours, whatever it took to do the job. So a lot of the roundup, it's not like you're trying to intentionally take advantage of the customer, but I think that the overwhelming message that needs to come through this is that minutes matter. So when you're looking at when you're looking at billing, when you're looking at processes, when you're looking at your service technicians and how they clock in and clock out of jobs, and I know it leads to a lot of other applications, but if the saving is only a minute here or 2 minutes there, your calculation just showed that it really does add up to a pretty significant amount by the time you factor it over even only 8 technicians. Now imagine that in 20 locations, across 20 technicians per location, that number becomes really significant in a hurry.
It certainly does. And we've got lots of dealers that would speak to that and say how much it's impacted their operations, to the point of literally paying for their whole DMS bill and then leaving lots extra. So yes, that's why we started this as point number one.
I want to just, Lloyd, if I may, just add here quickly for people to keep in mind, right? Lloyd came to it from the absorption, but keep in mind, if you do the rounding, you improve the efficiency of the technician on that metrics. That improves the absorption, right? So it's all tied back. Keep in mind as you go through that to all these ties.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, everything we're doing, remember, in this case, we're increasing top line without increasing cost at all. Back to the earlier slide. Absolutely true. Okay. And again, if there's questions, please put them in the chat, and John will interrupt me to so any of the 3 of us can deal with your questions as they come up. Okay. Point number 2, and again, this is something that some dealers do really, really well already, and a lot haven't embraced across different pieces of our industry. But maintenance plans now are even more logical. When new equipment isn't being sold, then people really need to maintain what they got. Literally, they can't afford to have it break down. That's the essential of it. And maintenance plans, when they're properly constructed and sold, are a very vital profit tool for the dealership, and they guarantee service work. And I took just a rough example here, again from experience, of having 50 units on service contracts and spread out what that means over the course of a whole year. It tends to translate, again, across our different segments of ag, construction, and the rest. That tends to equate 50 service contracts to about $1,600 per month in additional profit. So it's not anything to sneeze at. And remember, it's guaranteed work and it's guaranteed value that you're maintaining for your customers' fleets of equipment, right? They're going to be worth more when they go to trade in or whether they decide to sell it. Any other comments, John, from your side?
Yeah, I think I always come back when I look at any initiative that we want to put in place. I've got to look at how it affects everybody in their daily lives, and I think everyone today is used to the subscription methodology. You know, we don't rent movies one at a time anymore. We subscribe for a monthly fee. So we're used to this subscription basis. The advantage when you're pitching it to the customer is, you know, increased machine uptime, increased availability. Basically, it's ready when you want it. So think of you at home with Netflix. It's the same thing, right? I don't have to get up and go to the movie store to pick it up. So setting up those subscription plans or those preventative maintenance plans for customers takes a little bit of work up front. The upside to the dealer, aside from the financial piece, is we're talking about continuity of business and predictability. So we know what scheduled maintenance we have coming up in the upcoming month, in the upcoming week. So we're now, you know, making sure that our workload is dispersed evenly. Plus, we can plan for it. It's not machine down, run out in the field and fix the machine. That it changes a lot of that. So I would argue with you that the costs are probably, or the returns are probably greater than what you think in just having predictability in terms of your labor force and predictability in terms of filling up your shop and what's going to be there.
Oh, totally agree. I mean, we've got ag dealers that use January and February for going out and doing all the maintenance plans on combines and keeping their techs busy, which is normally a slow time of the year. So you're absolutely right. Okay. Example, again, just real quick on this is the planned maintenance screen from our software, but again, more questions down the road. Or ask us, you know, any questions you have, and we'll answer them down the road. Is what I meant. The third, and this is again in the servicing side of things, and this is something that some dealers have embraced, and a lot of dealers haven't looked at, and it's in a similar vein of you know, looking after your customers, and that's doing actual service inspections. And this applies to all industries. I mean, we've seen it, we've all lived it for years to do, and everybody's used to it with vehicles, with, you know, automotive or truck inspections. That's just the norm. But yet a lot of dealers in our market don't think it's valid, and yet we've got so many examples of how doing inspections drives more work, and it actually drives more customer satisfaction because they're happier that the machine is more maintained. You know, you called them out for a water pump issue, and the tech is there and does a 40-point inspection, says, hey, you know what, you also should have these other two items looked after. 99% of the time, that customer is going to do it at that point in time or within 60 days. Because they do understand, they do, you know, admire, you know, somebody that's going to say, help me look after my equipment. And I guarantee that the numbers I put in here as benefit analysis are absolute minimums. Depending on what part of our industry we're in, it's much more than $1,200 in top line. And it's also when you create a tech philosophy, a culture of service inspections, you get more than one inspection per week by technician. They start having instances where they're doing 2 or 3 or 4, and so this number is very, very lowball in terms of what serious impact it can have to create a culture of service inspections.
And I think the key word in there, Lloyd, is it's a culture of service inspections. It takes time to get your customers used to this and your customers ready for it. You know, a lot of times I like to work outside the industry. I was dealing with an RV dealer, a recreational vehicle dealer in April, and said, boy, you must be getting ready for, you know, the camping season's coming up. You got a lot coming in. And he said, camping season for them starts in June, but April and May, they've now cultivated with their customers a regular annual service inspection, so that their customers bring the units to them. They inspect the units, they complete any small repairs, they document any large repairs. And I said, well, that's a great way to build business. He said, no, it's a great way to build loyal customers. Because you got to remember, these guys are going to load up in June and head out onto the road to enjoy their family vacation. That's not the time they want to find out that the air conditioner doesn't work, or the fuses haven't been replaced, or that there's a leak in the roof, or the number of things that seem to go wrong regularly. So again, I liken it a bit to preventative maintenance by getting that annual service inspection, and making it cost effective, making it affordable for people to get the inspection done. But it really gives you the chance to come in and say, hey, if your machine is great, hit the field. That's good news. They're happy to pay for good news. If you've stopped them from having some catastrophic failure, or some major issue because you've caught it early enough and before it becomes an issue for them in the field, I think it makes a huge difference. So it's not just a dollar. It's not just a dollar benefit, it's a cultural benefit to the dealership too.
Right, and you're talking about a different version of inspection, because an annual inspection is another item to kind of a card in the hand, so to speak, on top of what I've got on here, the 20 to 40 point kind of typical inspection when you're called up for something else. Both work. Okay. And again, just some examples of, in this case, well, you can even see it. It's from a product called Activate that integrates in with our Quantum and some of our other softwares as well. Okay. And the fourth point we want to talk about, strangely enough, is inspections, but this is very, very specific to those of you that have rentals. And this is a different type of inspection because it's incredibly timely. And by the way, we've got a lot of ag dealers now that are looking at this going, can I rent equipment? And the answer is yes. There's an opportunity here for pretty much every equipment dealer to look at some form of renting. And it's, again, an opportunity for profit expansion. But part of what I've got this in here as our fourth item is it's critical that a rental return get inspected literally in the minute it's being returned into the yard. And if it isn't, trying to get any form of damage, minor or major, billed to the renter is pretty much impossible. The minute it's out of sight, out of mind, they haven't signed off on everything, they can argue it. And anybody that does any rents at all understands how often that these damages get eaten by the internal charges, work orders that end up going directly to the bottom line of the rental department. And that's, again, what I minimized here is that, with even 20 returns in a week, I guarantee that there's at least $1,000 worth of repairs that are being eaten by the rental department if they don't have a proper inspection process. And I'm comfortable enough to say that that's an incredible lowball amount. And those of you that rent will know what I'm talking about here. And so, why is that critical? We've talked about enough reasons, and there's something that a lot of people haven't seen. It's literally in pilot install cycle right now with a lot of dealers is the new DIS Rent Hub software that does all of what we just talked about. You've got it on the phones, and you've got the screens that show up talking about rental damage and sign off here. So again, I won't go into great detail here. It's just you need to have a tool to make sure you're tracking rental return damage the minute something comes back in the yard. Number 5, and I put this up here in a way, this is almost number 1 in some respects, is if you really want to improve productivity in the shop, and Udi knows all about this, and we'll get into an example here right after this, you really need to get your technicians involved in making sure that your worst technicians are either getting trained by your best or they're not doing certain jobs, and you need to put them over to the best techs already that work on that particular equipment, for example. Typically, or get your techs trained, as we put in here. And we've tracked this in literally hundreds of technician applications, and think of it as a low ball goal across an entire service department to say, you know what, let's try and gain efficiency of 5%. Well, if you talk about 160 billable hours per month of any technician's time, 5% means 8 hours worth of additional time billed throughout the entire month. Well, 8 hours by 8 technicians, $100 an hour, real simple math. That's $6,400 a month just by increasing efficiency. Okay, and it is absolutely achievable. And I will tell you, we've got dealers utilizing, when I skip to the next screen, utilizing, Jill, I'm going to show you, that have done double and triple that increase. And yes, does it cost you some money out of that 6,400 because you're going to spend some of it to incent the technicians? Sure, but the net gain for the service department is sizable. And a quick example of what I'm talking about, so we call a technician scorecard. And Udi, this is your specialty. Did you have comments on this?
Yeah, just wanted to add here that service. You can look at the service department as kind of like a team sports, right? Everybody has to play to the best they can to get those metrics like the efficiency up, which is going to increase the gross profit. And what we found with things like a technician scorecard, which dealers shares with all their technicians, is that suddenly the technician is driving the department, is driving the service manager, because everybody wants to do well. And when they look into their numbers, they come back and they want to do better. So they ask the questions, and as a result of that, everybody is improving. So this empowering of the technicians can be significant.
And a little friendly competition among them doesn't actually hurt.
Yeah.
So this is one we strongly recommend dealers consider. Okay. Number 6, again, this is efficiency. Think of this more as the back end efficiency, which is how are you tracking what the techs are working on right now? And how do you make sure that you're scheduling the right work for the right technician at the right time, that you're setting things up for them to do the work you want them to do, and to satisfy what we used to call a heat sheet. So if there's some customers that are more angry because of a breakdown than others, then you need the ability to start changing the order of what work is done in the shop. But you can't do any of that unless you have a tool that does shop scheduling. And I know a lot of people that are attending today might still be using whiteboards. They might still be using, I've even seen systems that use clipboards on a slider, a bunch of sliders, and one set of sliders for each tech, and put work orders on different clipboards. Okay, archaic systems. Are they functional? Yes. Are they doing what they could be doing to increase overall department efficiency? Probably not what you might think. And anybody that's using a scheduling system has typically gotten an increase of at least 2 percentage points in overall department efficiency when they move to a more modern tool. John, any comments on that?
No, Udi's going to smile because it comes back to the same old thing. If you can't measure it, if you're not measuring it, how can you possibly be expected to manage it? And while I think, I know you're at 0.6, Lloyd, and I think you had a top 10, so I'm sure I'll just fill in for the rest. These aren't miraculous ideas. This isn't new technology. This isn't the clouds opening and coming up with the solution to all your problems. This is common sense stuff that we all need to be reminded of on a regular basis. We get stuck doing the jobs. We're caught in that day-to-day grind of trying to take care of customers and their machines. And everything becomes an emergency. I think by a little bit of planning and scheduling, you can do this so much more efficiently, and ultimately the dollars come out the back end.
Absolutely. And why are the 2 screens here? It just happens to be that our particular product says, okay, how do you want to set it up? Give each technician a swim lane to say, this is the order I want you to do the next work orders, or do you want to use a calendar view and plot it out, via a day, the week, look ahead as far as you want and say, this is what I want you to do. And our particular software does either one to match the needs of your particular dealership. I will tell you that 90+% of the dealers from my experience, choose that the first option there, the swim lane view, as we call it, to just tell the text, look, this is the next job you need to be working on. Okay. Point 7, and strangely enough, this is probably the one that has the most impact from an automation standpoint, which is giving your text a tool so that they're not writing on hard copies. And then the hard copies have to be typed into your system by somebody in the back office, or service admin, whatever you want to say. And as stupid as it sounds, this is the one thing that your techs, if you aren't using a tool, are wasting so much time on, that the conservative estimate is 15 minutes per day per tech. And I will tell you that experience and tracking the differences, it's been 2 or 3 times that quite often. So this is a very lowball estimate. But even at 15 minutes per tech per day, well, that's again 5 hours worth of billable time per technician per month. So with 8 technicians in the shop, $4,000 a month, I guess you could say monkey off their back when they can just talk their stories into a tool and have that automatically follow through into back office. And yes, back office and pretty much any tool you use can filter it and change it if they need to. It's a lot faster than them typing it in the first place.
And I think there's another benefit there, Lloyd, that you didn't touch on in doing this. In my own life, if I have to text you and you ask me a question, you'll get a one-line answer. I may answer your question. I might explain a problem. If you're dealing with a voice-to-text scenario, chances are, and I go back and look at your own texts, if you're doing voice-to-text, it's going to be a multi-line answer. It's going to be considerably longer and more detailed, because mentally, you don't have to sit there and use your thumbs or use your pen and paper to work it out. You can actually talk the solution out in its entirety. So I think that's one benefit. The other side is the customer is going to get a more detailed explanation. I think the job story is going to be a little bit longer, because if you're writing it out by hand or typing it into a computer, your inclination is to make it as brief as possible so you can hands off and get on to the next thing.
Sure. Or think about the case where the swimming lane that Lloyd showed before appears right in the palm of your hand. It's right there. You know what to do next because the service department took care of it for you. You don't have to spend the half an hour of sipping through all the work orders that I got. Which one can I work on? Which one should I work on next? Right? That
absolutely. And
saves
you're right.
the time that Lloyd is talking here about.
Oh, giving techs a tool to use has all sorts of other benefits. What Udi just mentioned, it means that they can request parts without having to walk over to the parts counter. It means they can do things like taking applicable pictures before and after repairs and add it in to a work order. There's just lots and lots of other benefits of giving the techs a tool that makes sense for them. So absolutely true. And again, from our standpoint, just some examples of our particular service product, right? But again, if you have it with your own DMSs or have the option to add it, please consider looking at it, because it's probably the most impactful change you can make. And by the way, is it easy to do? I will never say that, because changing processes for technicians is never easy. And it may sound silly, but over the years, I've learned that when installing this product, if you manage to buy them all pizza and get their attention some other way, then it makes the learning curve simpler. I know it sounds crazy, but it seems to work. Okay. So again, just some examples from that side. Point number 8, and this is particular to the parts department. And I know a lot of dealers may have done this years ago when you installed the system. When was the last time you looked at it? And for some of you that just said, oh yeah, I know it's there, I want to encourage you, really, most systems have this capability. Please go back and make use of it. And the concept, I didn't put it in the slide, but the proper terminology is price inelasticity of demand, meaning people don't tend to care the price of a product, the lower the price is, right? And it's, you tend to care whether you are paying $1.50 or $1.10 for a cup of coffee from McDonald's, is a simple example. Not normally. People just aren't going to care much. And the same thing actually applies to parts. So the lower the cost, the less they're going to care about it. And you can use that to your advantage, set it up in the system. Again, this is a simple setup, and it will generate more GP. And I've done this over 30 years. I've walked into departments and said, oh, I can't do this. I need to, I will stick with list price as suggested, or else my lost sales are going to go up and I'm going to annoy my customers. And I've gone back to people, literally 30, 60 days later and said, so did your lost sales increase? And, because you were absolutely paying attention to track them. And the answer was, no, they didn't. And I said, great. How much did your gross profit increase in parts department? And it's literally been anywhere from 1% to 2% typically, by simply implementing a parts pricing matrix. And it might have a different name in different softwares, but the concept is there. And I really encourage everybody to look at that if you aren't already. And if you are using it, review it. Maybe you haven't updated your dollar breakpoints in 10 years, as inflation has made every parts price go up. So go back and revisit it, please. And a typical just example to give you a clue is, look, why, where we started here is to say, look, when it's ridiculously small, then it's 400 times cost, and your 31-cent sell price goes to 80 cents as an example. And so that's the starting point. So it's not large, but I will tell you that the quarters and the dimes add up on all the parts you sell. And this is why I had the other two columns in here, just percentage of sales and total profit increase. You don't need to do that as much as, please pay attention to this and just look at how much your profit increases in parts department from 1 month to the next. Any other comments?
No, I think it's the same thing. So there's a theme here that's gone through. Seconds add up to minutes, minutes add up to dollars. And when you look at this, it's a case of pennies add up to dollars and dollars add up to profit. So I mean, I think it's I'm sure that and I know Sarah has some questions coming in that she's going to read us at the end, but the pricing matrix percentages are yours to determine. So regardless of the software, you could determine breakpoints and dollar amounts. If it looks like something going from $7 to $9 looks like a big step, if it goes from $7 to $8.95, it's not as bad. You can really start to go in and adjust that and fine tune it to your customers.
Absolutely. And typically by where it's applying as well. And this was just all this was an example of a theoretical concept, but the whole point is do what makes sense for your business. To John's comment, please. The profits do add up.
But if you have more to go through here, and I appreciate that, but I'm just looking at the examples that you've gone through, Lloyd. If it's $1,500 a month here, and it's $2,000 a month there, and another $800 a month somewhere else, all of a sudden I got $5,300 a month in found revenue, in found money that, multiplied by 12 months, all of a sudden I'm looking at an extra 60 grand that's going to go in somebody's pocket. Preferably mine.
You're right, but the ideas we're talking about today really are north of $10,000 a month, just implementing 40% of them. So it's a huge number. And
yeah, I'm just trying to I'm just trying to eat the elephant one step at a time here. I mean, I think that's the thing, because the answer is all of these small incremental changes will really add up. And I can tell you, as somebody who lives in dealerships, all of this increases the value of the dealership and the overall stability of the dealership. I mean, and again, it plays to your absorption. And if I got a dealership that can deal with 100, 110, 125% absorption, that makes it, first of all, stable. Second of all, it makes it very attractive to people who want to buy it. It makes it attractive if you want to buy somebody else, because clearly you know how to use a dealership, right? So I think there's so many reasons to focus on these small items. And you're right, I love the big items. the bright shiny objects. These are boring, but they make money.
Oh, always. And all I was saying is that everything certainly does add up. And we have a couple more and this one's probably the simplest for everybody to understand, and yet not everybody drives their parts manager to do this. Especially in this day and age with all the supply chain issues and potential tariff issues, all this stuff. A lot of people are loath to go near a parts department, in terms of reducing. But I will tell you that a cleanup of some form really is essential, even in this difficult time, because your parts managers know there are some parts that really are not likely to sell, and you're better off to certainly clean them out if you have an annual plan already, power to you. But I know of a lot of dealers that really have gone hands off this, to John's point, because sales have been so well of equipment for a couple of years, for in some cases for supply chain issues. They said, no, I don't want to return anything because I'm not sure I'm going to ever get it again if I should need it. I get all that. You still probably need to have a look at all this. And the one-time benefit usually is thousands of dollars for a dealership. And this, I will turn over to Udi for a comment, since the simple way to get at this information, everybody can run reports from their existing systems. But it's funny how, I'll let Udi talk about analytics, just brings us so much into your face.
Yeah, it makes it really simple. One of the reasons why people don't do it is because it's hard to get the exact data of what parts can I get rid of. Some of them are reserved, some of them are protected, some of the whatever. When you have an analytics tool that can show it to you, it makes it a no-brainer. It's simple to do. Here is the list. Just go take action. The other thing, I want to go back to what John was saying. What is measured can be managed. In a discussion I had with a CFO in a dealership recently, right? He told me just to look into what we have in the inventory, just to keep that. That's a 2% of the inventory that I have, just to keep it, right? In a rule of thumb type of a thing. So if you can manage the inventory to the levels that you need, not only do you save because you reduce what's sitting in the inventory, but you also reduce what it takes to manage all this inventory.
Oh, very valid point. And it's funny that the parts department is our last of the top 10, and this is the one that I've seen dealers be really, really solid behind this and get amazing results. And I will tell you that 90% of the dealers I talk to have never even thought about doing this, don't think it would be productive, and think that it's upselling customers, which they don't want. The reality, though, is parts department incentives can work at least as effectively as service technician incentives to overall impact profit. And I mean, you can see the results here. And I will tell you, from dealers that have done different forms of parts, counterman or parts department incentives overall, the 5% increase in sales has actually been a low ball. When they say, look, I just want you to try and suggest related repairs, suggest upgrade kits to the equipment, suggest weekly specials at the parts counter, just things along those lines. And all it does is I guess, give a better, when it's done properly, it's certainly looking after your customers better and developing a better relationship. And again, this is, I'll turn this over to Udi, because he's worked with dealers to do this, to implement incentive plans.
So if you're looking for whatever dealership management system you're using, you want to look for tools like the analytics that we show here that can do all these incentives. You just set it up and you send it to go. It doesn't have to be that complex, not for technician in the service department and not for counter sales people. And they can just see what what incentives they are about to get or what they are getting, and that creates a by far more engagement.
Okay. So we've managed to pretty much hit our timeline on the top 10, and I literally have just a few more slides here to review with people. And I'm not going to read all of these, but this is the bonus slide. These are a bunch of ideas that have come from industry consultants, from dealers that have utilized them, and certainly from John and Udi and I's experience. Again, I will let people read through this, and any one of these is going to have an impact, a positive impact on absorption. It's just, you have to look at it and say, what do I think is the impact of any of them, and any of the ones we talked about. John already referred to it. The last line here is the critical one here. What is the idea likely to get you? $100 a month, $1,000 a month, $10,000 a month benefit. And that'll help you determine which need to be done first, that and how easy they are, but they all add up. And they're all going to be well worth the pain of change. And when you add them all together, it is a really solid recipe to get absorption well over 100%, both immediately and basically forever. And it's the whole purpose of what we're trying to talk about today. And that leads to, okay, providing there we go, my clicker advances. And this is just a general goal to talk about, what are you going to do, first, but more importantly, have you set all the goals properly? Are they SMART goals? And the last point's the most important. How are you tracking your progress? Because no change means anything unless you can measure what that's meant to your business. Here's the before, here's the after. Is it working? Do I need to adjust? Do I need to move to a different goal, different plan? All of those things. Nothing matters if you can't measure it. And that was our last core slide here, and this is just other analytics measurements, but specifically absorption. And Udi, any last comments on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to add here, normally, quite often, absorption becomes kind of like a number. Here is your number. Now, if you're at 150%, I'm exaggerating, and you're good, you don't care. But if you are at lower and you try to understand, what action should I take? What can I do? Where is it coming from? That's where these capabilities are coming. You want to look into a tool that will help you understand that, will help you understand, for example, which branch contributes more or less, which department contributes more or less. What happens if I want my absorption to be achieved by my sales and parts department, but what if I want to have it achieved by the parts, sales, and rental department, right? It's up to you. But when you have tools where you can very easily, very quickly adjust these definitions and requirements and see what the numbers look like, that will help you decide what actions to take in order to get it to the get the absorption to the percentage you want it to be.
Okay. Thank you, Udi. And this is literally my last slide, and at the end there's contact slides, and I can go through them real fast. But my challenge to everybody on this webinar is, okay, has any of this tweaked your interest, and do you know where you want to start? Because we all want to help all dealers, regardless of what software you're on. The industry is better if dealers get stronger. Your customers are happier if you're stronger as a dealer. So that's the purpose of all of this. And I will do this in literally 30 seconds. When you get copies of this, a lot of what you've seen, there's more detail on a lot of the products. So again, everybody attending will get copies of all this. And the reason why I'm going through this so fast, because these are the products from our side that you saw, most of these slides, not all. And we didn't talk a lot about texting, but it matters, and it's one of the ideas for people to potentially look at. And why am I doing all this? Because we're at question and answer. We want to make sure we had the time. And Sarah, was there much in the way of the chats for questions?
Yes, we had a few questions come in around labor rounding. Someone wanted to know, where are we going to quarters? Is it whole hour to quarters? And then another question was, how does the rounding of tech time affect WIP hours and payroll?
Well, usually, again, it's two different. First of all, most dealers, if they're using labor rounding from the DS standpoint, have let it set at default, which is hundredths of an hour. 9 out of 10 dealers don't realize they could go set this up to tenths or quarters of an hour for that. So that's the answer to the question. You're typically going from default of hundredths up to quarter hour, and it doesn't typically impact payroll because you're going to normally have actual labor punches on your payroll system. But again, it depends on how you decide to pay your tax, because there are dealers that are saying, look, it's not by, we're doing it on billable hours, in which case those hours are going to go through to payroll. So it depends on how you're set up. Hopefully that answers the question.
Hours worked versus hours charged, and every dealer does it a little bit differently.
Thank you, John. Yeah. Next question, Sarah.
Sure. So someone wants to know, is there a multi-point inspection available in the DIS system?
Depending on, yes and no. There's a simple multi-point available in Quantum. I'm not the expert on it, but it's not as thorough as what somebody might want, meaning, because it's there in Quantum, but an inspection tool really should have the ability to add notes, add pictures, have sign off from a customer. There's a whole bunch of factors that make inspections better, especially if it's a field inspection, that are way above and beyond what Quantum does as a starting point. How's that?
And Steve's actually adding, inspections are available in Service Logistics Plus.
Also true. Yes, thank you. One of our Service 360 options does have that. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, we have, this is more of a comment than a question. Timely updates to supplier price files has been critical for our business.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The rate of change right now is so fast that keeping your master price files up to date and current can be critical, because I'd love to say because of the price decreases, but it's not that way. Your costs are going up regularly, and every time that you can get a master price file and have an accurate cost and make sure that you're billing that out makes a big difference. That's a good point.
Yeah, we've got someone else asking, is it advisable to have all staff watch this webinar once the recording is made available?
There's no harm to it.
I say yes, and I'll tell you, I got all excited now because I love dealers and I love dealerships, and the smartest dealerships that I've been in over the last 35 years, everybody understands the core business. And in order to understand the core business, you have to understand what your absorption rate is. I mean, it's no different than going on vacation. You can't send the family on vacation without knowing, how we're going to pay for it. Or it gets really expensive for mom and dad when they come home. So the more that people understand that in order for us to have the longevity and the stability to take care of our customers, to grow our business, we have to focus on what is the absolute core of our business, which ultimately in a dealership is parts and service. Hence the reason everybody talks about absorption. If I had a takeaway from this, and nobody asked, but the takeaway for a dealer or anybody watching this is when you get off this phone, go back and find out or reiterate to yourself exactly what your absorption rate is right now. And how many people don't know. And to Udi's point, I love the last slide. Because again, how can you manage what you're not measuring? I think you need to see that absorption on a regular basis to know whether you're above the trend line, below the trend line, you know, what should we do next? It's not unlike going grocery shopping. I mean, it's not a free-for-all. We've got to have a list of things that we need, and absorption is one of those.
Yeah. I also want to say that the way to achieve it, Lloyd we went here in this presentation through multiple steps. The way to achieve it, what I saw with most dealers that I was involved, is take one thing at a time, right? Take your thing, define your project, and do it. When you have 10 or 20 possibilities, you want to share with other people at the dealership, because different managers will pick something, right, and focus on that. And overall, the impact is going to multiple.
True. Additional questions, Sarah?
We had someone asking, are you including rental as well as the parts service number? And I think this was referring to the beginning of the presentation.
Actually, it's at the end of the presentation, because Udi and I are smiling at each other. Lloyd, I don't know if you have the benefit of seeing us on the screen, because when we reviewed the slides, there was an interesting discussion, and I don't really know that it's a debate. In my mind, and I'll use the same thing that we talked about before, Udi, so when you say absorption, we're talking about parts and services provided to the end user customer. So I tend to always say services, because it varies from dealer to dealer. If you're primarily a rental house, and then yeah, I can see where one of your services is an ongoing rental, and you would include that because you may in fact have no parts business or very limited parts business. So it's right either way, but it's gonna really depend on the dealership and the makeup of what that dealership expects to be. If you're a rental house, obviously no rental, no business. So yeah, you want to include it. If you're a traditional dealership, I probably would not include it, because in that particular instance, rental is, as whole goods sales are, as used equipment sales are, kind of a come along. What do you think, Udi?
I tend to agree with you, and I want to just bring here 2 points. One of them is when we started, John, you said absorption is what happens if I don't sell, right? So now you can think about it, right? So okay, if I stop wholesale, I didn't sell, am I covering all my fixed expenses? Now, you can determine what you want to have cover those fixed expenses. So that's one thing. The other thing that I want to bring here, the nice thing of what you want to be able to do is always, right, kind of like play the what ifs, right? If you have some rental business and you enter it into the absorption, maybe you're giving yourself a little bit of a break, right, on the service, on the parts. So you can take it out and see what happens then. And that will help you understand how to improve your service and your parts, right? So you want to be able to play that game.
Yeah, and I think that's critical. I think that's critical with this whole management and measurement theory that you have to do. We're using absorption as the base method of doing it. I mean, if you're an extremist, you may look at your absorption sometime and go, you know what? Operating a service department doesn't make sense for me. Now, obviously, you have to weigh that into the rest of your dealership. If you're selling it, who's going to fix it? But you can start to look at things, and to Lloyd's earliest point, it's an opportunity to say, do I really need to have a service department in this branch? Or do I really even need to have a full branch there? Could it be a satellite makeup? I mean, all of this is about measuring those individual items.
Yep. How are we doing on the question list, Sarah? Because I know we're at the hour.
Yeah, we have one question left. Someone's asking, is there a report that we can print from Quantum?
To do what?
For absorption.
I'm not the expert on that off the top of my head. There may well be. That one I would have to defer to one of our support experts, because I don't know of one off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure there is one. Sorry to be so vague on that.
Well, we know there is a dashboard in analytics that does those calculations, that produces that immediately.
Yeah.
So
there is a report that does most of it in Quantum. I'm 98% sure. I'm just not sure whether you have to create that or whether it's one of the canned ones that's already there. So if whoever asked that, if you want to send me an email, I will make sure that support gets an answer for you on that. And again, back to the earlier point, any comments on ideas we missed, or you want more detail for your dealership to ask about something, please, by all means, reach out to me, and I will forward things on to John and Udi if needed as well. Don't worry about that. We want to try and certainly respond to anybody's questions and or need for elaboration on all fronts. And from my side, that leads to, I think we're a little bit over the hour, but Sarah, is that?
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. So you will receive an email within the next 24 hours with the webinar recording. And once you leave this webinar, we just ask again that you take a couple of seconds to answer the questions that pop up on the screen, because we do take the time to read your responses and feedback. All right, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.